Bonjour, or good day as we say down here. Today Australia is having a national election. I've already voted, so I'm a bit nervous. I refuse to read on it. I don't want to know. I don't quite trust the Australian electorate, I have to say, to do the right thing and get rid of our nutty Pentecostal Prime Minister. But there are interesting parallels with America, with what's happening now politically. And one of those main deals is that for the last 15, 20 years, our Labor Party, who are your Dems, have moved to the centre, doing the right thing by corporate Australia, getting in bed. So you have the Conservatives, who here are called the Liberals, the Conservatives with this austerity idea of the economy. Let's just screw the workers, down to the bone and call it productivity. And Labor keeps trying to occupy that middle space and go, it's safe to vote for us. You'll hardly notice the difference. We're so bloody conservative, you wouldn't know the difference. Including supporting policies to keep children, young children, in detention offshore, because refugees arriving by boat are not allowed to land in Australia, even if there's 300 of them on a leaky boat. They're taken to one of three places where no one can observe how they're treated and what's happening to them, which in itself contravenes certain major world covenants on how you treat refugees. So doctors, psychiatrists, theologians, different people have been arguing all these years saying that this is not right. We don't have access to these places. The point I'm making is this is the first election for the first time in a very long time that Labor, your Dems, have been saying this is not good enough. It's not working for working families. We are now going to be a bit different. We're going to actually take up our original mandate and fight for better conditions for people. And we're going to put money back into education and health. So we'll see. I'm going to a party tonight with the hardcore Laborites, so I'll give you a feedback. But I'm nervous, viewers. I'm very nervous. Now, back to the main game. Intrepid viewers who have been there since the beginning will know I've been harping on more than a year, maybe 18 months, saying this stuff's going to take a long time to play out because it's going to be played out in legal land, and legal stuff takes a long time. And it has seemed like forever. And now this week, as most of you are already commenting, it's all starting to come home to roost for them via the legal machinations. So the judge in the Flynn case loved that. So this judge said, okay, we're done here with this part of the trial. I want everything about Flynn unredacted and sent out to the public, published as part of a new version of the Mueller report with it all unredacted. You've got 2 weeks. Love that. Love that a lot. So Flynn, who was a bad boy, for a long time, we then know, turned evidence. And we now know that he turned evidence about several things, one of which was who high up in the campaign knew about the dealings with Russia. You'd have to think it's more than Manafort. You'd have to think it's Kushner and or Don Jr. Let's hope. If there's any justice in the world, let us hope. So what else happened? Oh, with Flynn, it's now going to, before he gets sentenced, there's this other thing that's happening, and that's different from the redactions. There were these sealed, I think they weren't sealed indictments, but they were sealed in other ways, and now they are being unsealed. So we're going to get much more information about what Flynn said when he spilled his guts. So that's one of the things I'll be reading on, is Flynn and what's the story there. Okay, what else is happening? The Treasury, of course, has refused to act on the subpoena for Trump's finances. So what are the Dems going to do about that? They've got several courses of action, but it's not easy stuff. What are they going to do? So Flynn first. Michael Flynn, fully treacherous behaviour, sold out his country for the old moolah. Greed is a terrible thing, isn't it? Okay, tell us about Michael Flynn. Okay, let me bring you to... Oh, he gets the fool in the middle. I love that. So, the past, present... Let me just move the mouse key. All right. The fool. There's no real words to describe what he did, what was going through General Flynn's head when he went to the dark side, what was really behind that. Truly dreadful. There's an ego issue here in the sense that he didn't think it had ever come back to bite him on the bum. There's a naivety with this fool. There are other interpretations of the fool, but given the scenario we know about him, beyond foolish, and there was no need to have to go and do all those dreadful things with Russia. He did it for the money. It was extremely foolish. So, unconsciously, what was that about? The rip-off card. I don't know that it was that unconscious. Let's see what the conscious said. Oh, okay. This is quite interesting. I don't know what the lighting's like on this video, viewers. This isn't yet another experiment. I'm going to pause the video and just see if I can change this lighting a bit. I don't know if that'll help, but we'll see. So, back to the cards. Now, unconsciously, this is a rip-off card, but I don't think he thought of it as a rip-off. He just thought of, oh, I'll get away with this. That's what I picked up on with the Fool card. It's that idea, not so much in his case of stealing as getting away with it. Looking over his shoulder, but confidently striding out, assuming he would get away with it. And then he got sprung. There was the offer that made him go gulp and feel totally compromised. What could he do? He didn't have a lot of choice because he was sprung. He didn't get away with it. And the slightly awful thing about this is he later went on to agree to testify against others and stuff, but at the time, in his purely selfish brain, it was, oh, bugger, I've been caught. But he was made an offer. You will give us everything you've got, or you're going to spend a very, very long time in prison. My question is, why is Chelsea Manning in prison and Michael Flynn isn't? Regardless of what you think about Chelsea, staunch to the max, 7 years jail, going back again rather than handing over Julian Assange. Would Julian do that for her? I doubt it. But in terms of sheer toughness, you got to hand it to Chelsea Manning. Okay, so we're back to Flynn. So Flynn basically was stupid, can't dress it up. The environment for him now could be the manipulator, could be the juggler. He's lost power, so I doubt he's the manipulator. He's juggling the rest of his life. He's not a young man, but he's not an old man. How the hell is he going to negotiate the next 20 years from here? Oh, you're the guy that sold out America, General Flynn. I think he should be stripped of his stars. Does that happen? If any viewers know, can he, after a serious case like this, be stripped of his stars? And if not, why not? Okay. So acting across that sort of environment, moving away, yeah, I'm not surprised. He'll have to move further than the US. Look out, Canada, he might be moving over the border. This is moving away to a better place. This is such a big thing. We've sort of forgotten about Flynn a bit because it happened very early. It was 5 minutes into the Trump brain, and so much has happened since. But Flynn remains one of the biggest gobsmacking betrayals in modern American history. So I'm not surprised he gets this card of moving away to another place. Americans don't usually just move to Europe or move to Asia or move anywhere really, but he might. He just might. But he's got to go through his sentence first. And a better place might be when he's in jail, he might actually have a mea culpa spiritual moment and move to a better place in that way. Outcome for him, the war horse, the mercenary. That just undermines what I just said. I don't think this is going to be a spiritual evolution. I think he's going to earn money in the future by being a bit of a Manafort and still being a hired gun. Ooh, there's an ugliness to Flynn's soul that I'd really underestimated. Greed is crude, but you sort of get it. This is more than that. He is a seriously nasty guy, and I had no idea. Yucky poo-poo. All right, so Flynn going to jail and then apparently coming out, going somewhere else and doing the same stuff. Oh, how vile. How vile. Just a moment. Okay, so what are the Dems going to do about the Justice Department, the Treasury, not giving them the documents they are legally entitled to as a basic premise of law? Let us see. What are they going to do? So the Dems. What are they going to do about this willful obstruction? How are they going to handle this willful obstruction? Willful. Oh, King of Cups. Oh, Nine of Swords. With them and the Sun. Oh, okay. This is not going to be a comfortable process, guys. Hang on to your hats. So, at the moment, they have here the Five of Pentacles, the out and the cold card. I think they're a bit shell-shocked. Right, they're a bit shell-shocked. They didn't expect cooperation in the traditional sense with the Republicans because they never give that. But I think they're actually quite horrified by the extent to which they've been stonewalled. They've actually been shunted out and rendered powerless in the face of these refusals. What the hell do they do? So I think on one level there's a level of dejection with the high-level Democrats. What the hell do we do with this? You know, this is not easy. But there's another element to this card too, which is there's an isolation here of being kicked out of the nest. So it could be read also in terms of the individual lawmakers and the individual people making these decisions not to cooperate are isolating themselves and turning away. So perhaps there's a mix of those interpretations here. But in terms of the key card, I feel it's the Dems going, oh my God, we have to go back to the real basics here. The King of Cups is coming to the rescue. The King of Cups I get here as the benevolent King of Cups, the father figure. This could be Biden. I don't think Schumer sort of registers so much. Biden has an emotional place in the American psyche. I think he can be the voice of reason. Joe, now, if you're listening, love, I said Dal, I said pet. They need to use his political credit points and his personal credit points to explain to the American people why they should act quite harshly and legally. I think it needs someone to explain it to people. Those Dems who follow everything don't need the explanation. Those die-hard Republicans who do not want things to change cannot be changed. But there's a hell of a lot of people in the middle. And that's who I think they need. It's not Pelosi. I don't think it's even Bernie. This is a Biden card to me. And he needs to be thinking very carefully, and he needs to be seen and heard night and day explaining whatever it is they decide to do. They have the World card. This is them representing diversity. This is them representing the best of America. It's also the end of one whole cycle and the beginning of a new one. So I think this here in this context is they are in uncharted waters. I think there was a case 20 years ago and another one 128 years ago around this sort of thing. These things do not happen often. So they're in uncharted waters, and they've got to trust that they have a vision of America as part of the world, and they have to demonstrate to the world, to all of us in the rest of the world, what are you going to do, Democrats, about this? They have to step up. They have a panic. They have a dark night of the soul. They're not of one mind. These two cards are uncomfortable and difficult. This is what they're going through now. They're going, we're out in the cold with this. What do you do? What's the right thing to do? What's the most effective thing to do? How do you do it? And what if we can't do this? We're shooting ourselves in the foot for next year. If we can't show that we're strong enough to stand up to this, we're sunk. But the Sun, they work it out. The Dems work it out. Oh, thank God for that. But I think there's going to be, to employ the famous Australian term that I'm sure you're all using regularly, argy-bargy. This is the argy-bargy. This is, 3 people saying we should do it this way, 4 people saying, no, we need to do it this way, others saying, you're selling out if you do it like this, others saying, we're going to sink if we go too fast, others saying, are you mad, you're going too slowly. That's argy-bargy. People coming together but not working it out. Right? So they're looking at a period of argy-bargy, but they sort it. They sort it. So I am really happy about that. How do they sort it? Let's get a clarifier on this. What's going to make a difference? What's going to give them their party line on their response? So what's going to bring the Dems together? What's going to bring the Dems together over this? just draw a couple of clarifiers. Okay. The main female, and poverty. Right. They've got to, it's funny, poverty cards are coming up. And so this card, the poverty card, has a couple of things to say. One is it's speaking to this also, the other chronic poverty card. I'm thinking it's more poverty of ideas and poverty of cohesion. So it's not that they're not thinking about things, but they're thinking poor. You know how there's that idea of just the, at the moment they're stuck in this poor mentality. Oh, poor us, we've only been here, you know, for a few months and we have to deal with this, and can we get a united front? It's a bit negative. Then the main female comes in. Now, there's been a lot of praise for Elizabeth Warren on this channel. We all love Elizabeth. I can't speak for everyone. Of course, we don't all love Elizabeth. I love Elizabeth, and a lot of you do too. But I think this is back to Nancy. This is much more Nancy Pelosi than Elizabeth Warren. The main woman is going to whip them into line. So at the end of the day, all these conversations will be had, people will be worried, okay. But now, I've never been a mad supporter of Nancy Pelosi, so I'm not just going, oh, Nancy's great. I have my own criticisms of Nancy. I think it's time to move over and mentor, but I've also said she's very good at this time for America because she's tough as nails, and you'd have to be. So I think she's bearing the rose. She's bearing the rose. I think Nancy's actually going to play a very instrumental role in pulling this off. And Biden really has to work his charm and work his magic and very calmly explain to people why they have to do their next step. Okay, so I'm going to try and find out here what that next step looks like. I think the cards are a bit reluctant to be specific in the sense because it's being talked about, it's being thrashed out, right? It isn't decided yet. If you said to any of the 10 top Democrats, what are you going to do with the Justice Department, or what are you going to do with Treasury? There isn't a single answer, and that's why the cards aren't necessarily specific. So let's just have a try and see if we can get something a bit more specific. What are they going to do? Going to separate them. What are they going to do about the Justice Department first? Justice Department. What are the Dems going to do? Oh, sorry. Yes, like I said, oh, the King of Cups again. Oh, the rip-off again. Oh, the Fool again. Isn't it amazing? Okay, so with the Justice Department, they get the Apprentice card, which means they're working on the details. They're working very closely on the details. The Father of the Nation, I'm calling this as Biden, will be involved. They're going to declare the rip-off. So this is ripping off the American people. You cannot, I think that's, I don't just mean that colloquially, you know, oh, it's ripping off the American people to not act on this. It's deeper than that in this context because this is such an important issue. And I think this is what's going to push them over the line, is they're going to say we cannot let the American people dangle. We have to be decisive. The Fool. Now, remember my spectrum for the cards, as I say to my students, from the base negative to the high meanings. base negative, they're very stupid. They could make a very stupid decision. It could be walking off a cliff. But I don't think so. I think it's one of the higher meanings, which is they have to trust. This card is also about trusting completely. They have to trust. The American people are starting to feel very ripped off, generally, with Trump. They don't need to be ripped off by the Dems as well. Have faith. Democrats, have faith and go hard. Okay, so that was the Justice Department. So the other one is the Treasury. We'll have a quick look at the Treasury. Minution. Weird, selfish, shallow, typical ingredients, right man for the job for Trump, not a thinker, totally irresponsible, not even a very good economist. What are they going to do with the Treasury Department? We'll see if it's any different, shall we? Treasury. Let's have a look. How are they going to handle the Treasury refusing to hand over his papers? More and more is coming out, of course. They almost don't have to, but not the point. What are the Dems going to do about the Treasury Department? Oh, this is interesting. Okay, they get two major arcanas in relation to this. On top, Temperance, steady as she goes. It's a different energy from the Department of Justice stuff. They're going to just keep thinking about it for now. They're talking different points of view. How can they reconcile this? What are they going to do about this? Represents Treasury in this case. It's a Pentacles card. Remembering those learning tarot, only Pentacles card with black Pentacles, dark money, meaning the bent Treasury now, because it's just there to service the very wealthy. So what are they going to do about that? They're stronger than they realise. It's a bit like the Fool having the meaning of trust. They're stronger than they realise. Take their time on this one. Not forever. I'm saying, you know, by all means, if you need 2 weeks to decide, take 2 weeks. But I don't want to be talking about this in 6 months' time, Democrats. Get your act together. So, thinking about it, discussing it, this has been reasonable. They have the Strength card. They are stronger than they realise. This seems to be the recurrent theme with the Dems. They're more popular than they realise. We had the King of Cups in Biden, Queen of Cups here. Who is the Queen of Cups? Now, Pelosi, much more wands, much more swords. She was out there, and I think this is not Nancy Pelosi. This could be Elizabeth Warren, but I think she's more out there too, you know, in terms of warrior energy. It might not be a single woman, a literal woman. This could be women. Now, why is the women as a collective coming up at the moment? We all know the answer to that. Sorry I kept talking about Georgia when I meant Alabama before, but more states are lining up for the Inquisition. Really, we're going back 500 years in a matter of weeks. It's a miracle of time travel, isn't it? You know, women are angry over all that other stuff. That means it translates into women talking about all sorts of other things too. I'm not saying there's suddenly 60 million women who are discussing this issue on the economy. What it does mean, this is what's giving the Dems strength. All that dreadful, patriarchal, caveman stuff is giving them strength in the base. They can do what they like. They should ride this wave. And I think this is speaking to the women's collective. This will back them up in whatever they want to do to start nailing these bastards. I think there's a transfer of energy going on. I feel the pendulum shift. They have all cards here saying, if you want to deal with this, stay calm, stay strong. Don't be afraid of the emotional component. Cups are emotion. The lid is on here. The lid is on the cups. Those American GOP guys should be worried if the lid comes off the cups. So go for it, Dems. All of that is about go for it, Dems. It almost doesn't matter whether you go down this road or that road, you know, because I think there's 3 or 4 legal options they can do. The path is not so important. It's the action that's important, and people want to see it, and it's time. Love you guys. See you real soon. I press pause. You've still got me. See you next time. Ciao, ciao.